Good start. Oh, good start. Okay, right, let's press on. Oh.
Got the
Is that okay? Is that right now? Yeah, okay, good. Let's press on with the meeting. Now, just to say to members, in case you aren't aware, we're going to do 6D first. So we swap them round. So we're going to do 6D and then 6C. So that 6D is the barn at Wembury, and 6C is the one at Fishley Barn just outside of Modbury. So Wembury first, Modbury second. Right, just as the new members of the public here, just to say how we're going to do it all is that the planning officer will introduce the application as it is. Then there are various speakers as listed, so objectors, supporters, parish councils and ward members. Not all of them will be here, but some of them will. Once they finish making their presentations, after each one is finished, members of the committee might ask questions for clarification. And then when they've finished, then we'll move into the debate and then the decision will be held. Okay. So we will now move on to agenda item 6D. So that's 347021 HHO. That's over to Miss Hanlon as the planning officer. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so as we know, this is a householder application in Wembury at Old Barton Barn. Here's the site map. Obviously, most of you went to the committee site visit on Monday, so we're just outside the built form of Wembury, as you can see here on the map. And this just shows you the aerial view, so we're a little bit separated from the actual main village of Wembury. So the applicant wishes to construct a single-storey extension, as you can see here on the plans, and it's in the corner between the two plans. So this is just the roof plan to show you where it will be sited. So I think you can just see my cursor here, and it's got one roof light in that elevation. And this just shows you the floor plan. So they'll obviously be creating a doorway into the main kitchen area, and just to create the dining space shown here in red. These are the elevations, so you can see from the east and west elevations that the design of the extension has a more contemporary theme. It's got this curved metal roof, which is a bit more apparent from the north elevation, and it has largely glazed walls. And these are just some site photos to refresh your memory. Now, the access road that you're looking at is actually down to the neighbouring farmhouse. You'll remember that we took the higher road round to the barn itself. This is the main courtyard, and the proposal will be sited right in the corner at that junction between the two buildings. And that's the area highlighted here, and they've obviously got some outdoor tables and chairs sited here just to kind of show you where it will be proposed. Now, the main issues, we think that the extension would appear overly domestic and it detracts from that robust functional character of the barn, and that's why we consider it harmful to the barn. It's contrary to the barn guide, which does talk about extensions and gives guidance where those are acceptable and where those aren't. And obviously, as it's in the AONB, we're concerned that it doesn't conserve and enhance that non-designated heritage asset. And on this basis, the application is recommended for refusal.
Thank you very much, Ms Hanlon. Any questions, members? No? In which case we'll move to the speakers. There's no objector, a supporter. Miss Barrett, you got 3 minutes, and I think I heard Miss Young saying that when your 3 minutes are up, she'll sort of, or 30 seconds before, she'll say something or other. So hopefully you'll hear that. Okay, so when you're ready, so if there's a button. Over to you.
Old Barton Barn was 4 crumbling walls and asbestos roof when we bought it. In restoring it, we've always respected the history of the building and only made changes where necessary. The materials were reused, repurposed, and wherever possible, and only when it could not be salvaged were replacements sought, handmade by master craftsmen. We live in a multi-generational home. We live with both sets of parents, and now, thanks to COVID, we have 2 adult children back at home. There can be up to 3 people working at home at any one time. The extra space is needed for several reasons. Our home is open plan, and when everybody's working from home, I have one on the landing, one in their bedroom, and one at my mum's dining room table in the granny annex. Mum is lovely, but she's 85 and fitting well, but it's not fair to keep ousting her from her space when we need it. We agonised over the design to submit. The design we decided on was sympathetic, but clearly a modern addition. It's been called incongruous, but this term is simply too subjective and it doesn't give a clear reason to refuse the application. The barn is not listed or designated. We are a non-designated heritage asset, and from the point of when the plan was adopted, there were several other barns that have had extensions permitted. As reported, there were no objections from the Parish Council, the Highways or the MOD. Also, the National Trust, who have covenants on all the land and buildings in the area, have given approval to the design. There were no objections raised on the portal or the neighbours or the public. The extension is distinctive yet small, designed to sit comfortably within the existing buildings with lower gable ends at either end of the arch roof to soften the angles and allow the junction between the 2 original buildings to be seen. So there is clear definition between old and new, but a harmony by mirroring the gentle arches of the doors and windows. The planning officer's report states removal of a substantial section of existing historical material to form openings. There are no structural changes to the building whatsoever. We've instructed a recommended architect who specialises in barn conversions to ensure a good standard of design. The design does not harm the character or appearance of this non-designated building. The location was chosen carefully to ensure 0 impact to the scenic quality. Its minimal size cannot be seen from neighbouring properties, footpaths or highways. It was designed to sit harmoniously next to the original building with a solid roof to protect from light pollution. We as owners of these beautiful buildings have secured their future. We will continue to protect, maintain and enhance the special quality of this area. The key issues stated are design. Architect designs, and we feel has great architectural merit. Scale in relation to the size of the building, it's very small. There is 0 harm to the original building, but the benefits to the family are immeasurable. Citing interior courtyard setting unseen from any aspect. We simply do not feel there's legitimate planning policies or strong reasons to refuse this modest and what will be a well-designed extension. It's not incongruous. Thank you, sorry. And apologies for the state of the lane. It was really bad when
That's
came.
all right. Yeah, I was going to say. Thank you very much for that, Ms. Barrett. Members, any questions?
Yeah, sure. I've got a question. Why have you gone for a curved roof?
So that the gable ends were a little bit lower. Part of the issue was they wanted to be able to see the junction between the 2 buildings, and because one's slightly set lower, we thought it would you'd be able to read it better, you'd be able to see the junction between the other 2.
Thank you for that.
Councillor Abbott.
When you're inside your extension,
Your microphone, please.
When you're inside your extension, will you be able to see this join because you're going to leave the walls unfinished? And if you're outside the extension, will the glass permit you to see this junction of the 2 buildings?
Yeah, the walls will be unfinished.
Any more members? No? Thank you very much, Ms. Barrett. Oh, thank goodness for that. Right, okay. Right, moving swiftly on, we'll now move to Councillor Brown as the local ward member.
Yes,
Brown.
indeed. Thank you, members, very much for attending the site visit on Monday, and my apologies that I was unable to be there. I'll start off by saying, because clearly the parish council isn't here. The parish council isn't here because it hasn't objected to the application. But to just put that on record, clearly the parish council hasn't objected to the application. The reason I have brought this before the committee, whilst I completely appreciate the reasons the planning officer has given for recommending refusal on this application, I do think that it needs to be considered by the committee. There hasn't been any objections to this application, nor from the parish council, nor any local residents, and I would hope that the committee would be mindful of that, and indeed many local residents, as far as I understand, have indicated their support for this. I do consider, personally, I would consider what is being proposed to be a relatively modest extension to this barn for very reasonable means, and I don't believe the scale and massing to be particularly incongruous or take away from the existing structures, which, as the supporters have said, you know, the family have worked hard to restore and ensure that what is a lovely old building can be restored to its former glory. And there are so many of these barns that we see across the district just left to fall into a state of complete disrepair. So I don't have any objection to it, and that's really all I've got to say. Obviously, as I said, thank you for attending, and I apologise that I couldn't attend with you, and I'm sure you'll have been, members of the committee will have had the chance to see the relative scale of these proposals in relation to the landscape as it is, and I'll stop there, but be very interested to hear what other committee members have to say about it. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Right, members, over to you. Councillor Abbott. Thank you, Councillor Abbott. Councillor Taylor.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. First of all, I would congratulate the applicants on the sympathetic way they've reinstated this barn, because it looks really good. The only issue I got is the fact is that the extension that is proposed does not sit nicely into the stone-built area of all the barns around that courtyard. That design to me is going to stick out like a pimple, if you like, and we don't want that all over the barns. Is this going to be the only one we get? Because at the end of the day, it's a design that worries me a little bit, to be honest, because it's not going to sit within that barn as a barn structure. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Anyone else comments? I mean, there in it, I think you have the two sides of the argument. One, that it's a very modest extension, and although albeit modern, you know, one could argue that a modern extension is, but it's you know, it is a living, working barn and the modern extension sort of, it's not trying to pretend that it's anything but a part of a new living space. And then on the other hand, as Councillor Taylor has expressed, you know, do you think that it takes away from the actual historical heritage value of that barn? Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chairman. If I may, I would like to propose move approval of the application, which I appreciate is in contravention of the office's recommendation, but I would like to personally propose approval.
Councillor Kemp. And I'll come to Councillor Rowe.
I'd just like to ask if that is structurally attached to the barn. So it is actually architecturally fixed to the barn.
I'm assuming that it is.
So does it actually, is it built into the wall of the existing barn, or is it just bolted on, or?
Well, I think it's sort of bolted on in a sense. I mean, I think what we heard from the applicant was that there's going to be no structural change to the original barn as it is.
Right, okay,
So
that's fine.
But I'm assuming it's going to abut.
It will
you know,
butt
it's
up.
going to be
won't it?
airtight, yeah.
Okay.
I think that's correct.
Yeah.
Ms.
We
Hannah?
haven't obviously got constructional details at this stage. That would be the next step. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Rowe.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to ask a question which I should probably have asked previously, but did you say that the roof was a zinc roof? Or I'm not quite sure what the materials for the roof proposed were.
It looks like standing seam metal from the plans.
So thank you, which is not really in keeping with the barns, but.
Councillor Long.
Chairman, the design and access statement, I don't know whether it's been changed, does mention the roof as being copper standing seam. I've got one question because none of the plans seem to show it. The wall that adjoins the lower barn, is that that face going to be all wood and glazed, or is it doesn't seem sharp on any plans, a solid wall against that lower barn?
So if you look at the plans now, they've just got effectively two walls that go up to the existing barn, if that makes any sense. There's no third wall that they're creating.
There has to be, because it stands higher than the lower barn, so there's nothing on the plans for whether, because your comment was whether you'll be able to see that junction if it was completely glazed on three sides and you could actually see that roof through it, you'd see the glaze, you know, the junction through the glazing. But if it's going to be a solid wall, that would change it.
Is that correct? I don't think it is higher than the. That one there, yeah, that one there. If you, it's hard to see really. Yeah, if you zoom.
Yeah, there's no clarity there, because obviously your concern is being able to see the junction of the lower barn with the higher barn. If that was fully glazed, if that's going to be a wall, then that compounds it, and it's not clear from the plans.
See what you're saying there? I mean, do we know if that's glazed, that bit there?
There's a section and that suggests it's glazed.
Yeah. I look, put it like this. I mean, I think if members, if that's a turning point on it, we can make sure that that so you can. I mean, my understanding is that basically you've got the two walls outside and everything else stays the same, so that you can actually see through it and see the old walls as is. And likewise, if you're sitting in it, you can see them as well. But I take your point, Councillor Long, that if that bit of wall there, if that's solid, then you suddenly won't. It would have a larger effect. It is glazed. Okay, it's glazed, so you can see through it. Yeah. Okay. Members, Any more comments? I've got Councillor Pan. Approval. Okay. So if there's no more comments for people to make, I will take the proposal for approval, which has been seconded. It's against officer recommendation. So I'm going to have reasons why.
Chairman, my main reason why is that I believe it to be a modest extension, and I don't believe it doesn't constitute overdevelopment of the site. Personally, I don't believe it to be incongruous. I appreciate what the planning officer said, but personally, I don't believe it to be incongruous on on the buildings currently there. So those would be my reasons for doing so.
Councillor Panel?
I would add that the design has been sympathetic in allowing visual interpretation of the existing relationship between the two buildings, because as we've heard, it's glazed, and you will be able to see how those two buildings sit together. So I think that's an important factor.
Ms Hanlon, Mr Weimer, are you happy with those? I mean, obviously, no, you don't agree, but
It's always quite a difficult one to. Are you happy with it? I think in terms of the wider sense, yes, but I would like members to explain why they think this is appropriate in accordance with the design, the barn guide that's forms part of your adopted SPD.
I think it might be helpful if someone could read out the relevant part, just so that's fresh in everyone's mind, of the barn guide. Have we got that? It's in the report, isn't it? Yeah. That would be a very good idea. I appreciate. I think this is where it's going to hinge on really, and I think from Councillor Brown and Councillor Panel, what they're trying to see is they feel that there should be some wriggle room here, because I noticed in the report it says that that a contemporary approach to development is not unacceptable in principle.
There is a fair amount. It's not just a nice snappy paragraph to read.
I think what would help members, I mean, as it says in the report, that a contemporary approach to the development is not unacceptable in principle, and members have to decide whether they think that this contemporary approach has that detrimental effect on the heritage asset.
I think,
and that, in a way, that is a subjective call.
I think that's right, and I think the general thrust of the extensions element of the barn guide we've got up there is where it says the general absence of extensions and additions to traditional farm buildings is an aspect of their historic interest and their authentic character. So I think our starting point is, generally speaking, you shouldn't, if a barn to be converted needs an extension, generally speaking, we would try to resist that because it does detract from its authentic character from the barn. So now I accept there's a subjective element to that, but my personal view and professional view is that we really should avoid putting extensions on barn conversions, because the fact that an extension goes on, whether you can see through it or not, does detract from that historic form.
Councillor Kemp, did you want to say something?
Well, I was just thinking that, I mean, I love barns and you know, I like to see them as they're supposed to be, which is great. But that little extension, surely that can be taken off at any time, can't it? Without damaging it, is what I mean. So
Well, I think you could argue that it's been very sympathetically designed so as not to affect the intrinsic original nature of the barn. I mean, I do find this incredibly difficult, these sorts of decisions. I mean, to me, in a perverse sort of way, because it is so contemporary, that in a way it's not detracting.
It's not incongruous, it's contrasting.
Yeah, exactly. That's very good. Yeah, very well put.
Thank you.
That you've got that modern design with the traditional barn behind it, and in a sense, it doesn't, because it's so contemporary and different, it doesn't detract from it. It has, as Councillor Kemp says, it contrasts with it. But anyway, just proposer and seconder, if you could just sort of expand on your reasons for.
I think moving on from this argument of not all of these modern designs are unacceptable, or the principle of the modern design is not necessarily unacceptable, I would include that as part of the reasoning for it, if that was considered appropriate by Mr. Weimer. I sort of agree with both what yourself, Chairman, and Councillor Kemp have said, in that if this was trying to imitate an element of basically an old nature of this building, which is in a very obviously quite fake way, I think that would then detract from the original element of the building. But given that it is quite, as has been said, it is quite an obviously modern adaptation to the property, I don't think that is taking away from the original character of the building. In that it's not trying, stupid saying, it's not trying to be something it isn't, but it's not trying to be, part of the original. It's very obviously a new part of the building. It's not, if that makes any sense. I'll stop wittering.
Yeah.
So on the point I was looking for, fundamentally, the modern lightweight construction, because it is completely different and you can see through it, there's a clear distinction between the original building and the extension being proposed, I think is what you're saying.
Be very happy with that, Chairman.
Yeah, because I think it's sympathetically designed and retains the visual interpretation of the link between the two original buildings. Because it's glazed, you can see that link. And I think that's quite an important factor.
Okay, members, so we have got a Councillor Kemp, if you could just turn your. That's right, I just hear you mumbling away. Right, so we've got a proposal which has been seconded for approval, which is against officer recommendation. You've heard the reasons as to why you think you should go against, or you could go against officer recommendations on this particular case. So can I have a show of hands of all those in favour of approval, please show. Approving of the application, so that's against officer recommendation. So that's 5 in favour. And all those against, please show. Okay. And I'm abstaining. So my casting vote is I will go for approval. Partly because I think it is a sympathetic design, and I think that it doesn't detract from the historical elements of it, because it's obviously different and you can see all the important, the joins and the roof lines, etc. So I think in that aspect, I think the extension is good. So that application is approved on my casting vote. I'm glad I didn't have to do it on the Cottage Hotel. Right, so that application is approved, and we shall move on to application 6C, which are Barnes, Fishley, Modbury. Yeah?
I'm sorry, but we haven't done the conditions for that item, so we do,
okay.
We do need to go back.
Sorry, yeah, my mistake there. Conditions on.
I can help. I think just for clarity, it will need to be standard time at the start, completion in accordance with the approved plans, and completion of the drainage. Completion of the drainage in accordance with, fundamentally, installation of the drainage in accordance with the plans that have been submitted to us. So it needs those three, but sorry, I should have jumped in as well. We just need to get that clarified for the decision.
Okay, yeah. So members, are you happy with those conditions on there? Yeah. Right. Okay, so that's approved subject to those conditions. Thank you, Ms. Hannon. Mr. Henry, welcome. Take your time there.
What do you think of the age?
What?
Somebody said to me, "Tom, you're a farmer." I go, extra group, and then
Right. Yeah, I know, but I think they're getting an echo.
Slides come now. Slides are gone.
Is that? Oh no, we're still getting feedback. Shall I try that now? Is that okay? Yeah, okay. So it's because that was on. All right, fine. Miss Henry, you okay? Ready? Yeah, don't take your time. Don't worry.
Ready to go?
Yeah, ready to go. Miss Henry, over to you.
First of all, I'd just like to point out that in the officer's report, it refers to the neighbourhood plan as not being made. This is an error, as it was adopted on the 20th of May 2021 and forms part of the development plan. Having said that, paragraph 54 of the neighbourhood plan states that new business development in the parish would be welcomed either as a small new employment unit or at the edge of the village or through the conversion of a suitable building. The site, it should be noted, is neither on the edge of the village or is it a conversion of an existing building. Furthermore, paragraph 55 points out that whilst increased tourism trade through the provision of bed and breakfast and camping facilities will be welcomed, there is, however, a concern that growing numbers of second homes and holiday lets would be detrimental to the village. The application site occupies a countryside location between Atherton Gifford and Modbury on the very edge of the South Devon area of natural beauty. The site is accessed directly from the A79. And the existing buildings surrounding the application site are comprised of the principal residential property and various associated outbuildings. This application follows a previously refused application, and a recent application was however approved for the access and tracking to the site. This proposal is for the erection of a holiday let specifically for the use by disabled visitors. The application is put before committee at the request of Councillor Kemp for reasons that the application will contribute to the rural diversification and meet an unmet need for disabled tourism. The slide here shows where the holiday let will be located on the site, just over here by the hedge. Again, this photo shows you over here is where it will be located. This plan shows a rough sketch of the orientation of the barn and where the parking will be sited over here next to the barn with the existing track from here, which continues down here to the A road. The design of the barn is fairly simple, using timber and metal sheeting for the roof. The holiday let will measure 11 metres by 5 metres with a ridge height of 3.8 metres and height to the eaves of 2.8 metres. With regards to the holiday let being wheelchair compatible, all doorway widths and ramps, there will be doorway widths accessible for wheelchair with ramp access, and will also meet building regulation part M, and the agent has also recently provided a revised plan showing the access point down here and sufficient space inside for wheelchair use. With regards to sustainability, the holiday let is quite small. However, the applicant has provided a list of measures that will contribute to the council's 50% reduction target in accordance with policy DEV 32. The sustainable travel plan also sets out a number of actions to reduce the carbon footprint of the development. However, it should be noted that sustainable development lies at the heart of the joint local plan, with rural communities and development being well served by public transport, walking and cycling opportunities. The JLP sets out a hierarchy of settlements where development in hamlets and the countryside will be only permitted where they can be shown to support the principles of sustainable development and communities. Consequently, development proposals should demonstrate a safe access to the existing highway network and avoid significant increase in the number of trips requiring a private car. The applicant states the justification and need for disabled holiday lets stems from an identified gap in the current provision of appropriately designed, accessible, disabled tourist accommodation. With regards to the demand, it is stated that whilst there are holiday premises within South Hams, choice is limited. The agent cites a finding in a national disability strategy that many disabled people are unable to take part in activities due to accessibility issues when on holiday. Whilst this is concerning, there are no disability exception policies in the JLP. Therefore, development must be managed in accordance with the principles of delivering a sustainable economy and society and environment. In this instance, the site does not accord with the locational and accessibility requirements of the development plan and is considered to be located in an unsustainable location, only really accessible by private car. Moreover, getting to local services by foot or by bicycle would involve negotiating reasonably long, generally unlit and sometimes narrow stretches of a highway. Walking and cycling from the site would therefore be neither particularly appealing or safe. Furthermore, the government survey regarding disability is not location specific to the area of Devon, so there is uncertainty as to the level of need in the area. It is therefore considered that the proposed benefits of the sustainability elements of the holiday let is not sufficient enough to outweigh the considerations which have led to a recommendation of refusal. And just as a reminder, the key issues are unsustainable location, over-reliance on the private car, also, it should also be noted that several similar applications in the countryside have gone to appeal and have been dismissed. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Henry. Questions? Councillor Panel.
Can I just ask on the sustainability issue, what weighting is given to? We were told, or we were informed at the site visit, that the site lies on a bus route, an hourly bus route between Plymouth, Modbury and Kingsbridge, I presume, which the bus company is prepared to stop right outside this property. What weight is given to that when sustainability is assessed, please?
Okay, in case you didn't hear that, I was saying some weight,
That's
but there's not a guarantee that they would use the bus.
Thank you.
I think, members have to decide that element for themselves. Councillor Foss.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. On page 50, the reasons for refusal, the second one, the proposed development, that reason surely no longer applies because the access has already been dealt with under planning, hasn't it?
There's one reason for approval, refusal. That's already been approved, the track and access to the site.
On my laptop, I've got the agenda, and on page 50 it says item 2 under reason for refusal mentions the access. All I'm making the point is that shouldn't be there anymore because the access has already been agreed.
It may have been those were stating the reasons from the previous proposal.
Okay, so I think what we're saying here is the reasons for refusal. So on page 50, reason 2 has been sorted. So it's just purely on one, and it's about an inappropriate, isolated, and unsustainable location, and that's really what you have to decide, weighing it up with the other balances that you have. Council panel, did you want to come back?
Well, I'm just going to say, I think just the officer was pointing out that is under the heading of relevant planning history, and that was the grounds it was turned down in November 2020. If you go just slightly above that, so that's not the current reason.
No, correct.
Right. Okay.
Yeah,
sorry.
correct. Yeah. So, but anyway, that's gone. That reason's been satisfied. So it's just the one above it there. Any more questions, members? No. In which case, we'll go to the speakers. And I have Mrs. Wotton. There we are. You've seen how it goes. Press the button and then 3 minutes over to you.
Okay. Andrew grew up on a working farm in the South Hams. We're both local business owners providing employment for 10 people. We understand the need for sustainability. In fact, our son is studying renewable engineering at university. Tourism is important to the South Hams, but there is an acute need for accessible tourism, demonstrated to us by a friend who is a wheelchair user of 20 years and our son working as a surf instructor teaching disabled children. Our application is a combination of the needs to diversify and a passion to provide a low-key cabin retreat for disabled staycationers. Our aim is for visitors to access the outdoors and enjoy the benefits this brings to well-being, glamping with suitable facilities on hand. Holiday Cottages UK lists 108 properties as accessible in Devon. Only 3 are in the South Hams. Out of the 3, only 1 was fully accessible. Disabled Holidays UK has 29 fully vetted properties in Devon. Only 1 was in the South Hams. I have more information should you need any further illustration of the lack of opportunity for disabled visitors. Our cabin will include a walk-in seated shower, wet room, wide doorways, turning circles, no thresholds, accessible kitchen, and a ramp from the car space to the entrance. The site is not in an area of outstanding natural beauty, and the Appleton for Neighbourhood Plan has been adopted. It includes policy for new businesses in rural parts of the parish outside of the village boundary. The application is fully supported by AG Parish Council, accepting that accessible facilities are not available in the village. AG and Mobbury are not easy places to navigate if disabled due to steep hills, lack of pavements, steps into shops, front doors exiting directly onto roads. Car parking AG is often limited to the village hall and Timbers car parks, not ideal for disabled guests with luggage and provisions. Importantly, the number 3 bus route from Plymouth to Dartmouth stops directly outside the site, linking to other local bus routes, train stations in Plymouth and Totnes, providing sustainable transport links. Our children went to school on the bus and we have used it to get to Plymouth. The building will be sustainable, incorporating solar panels, a biomass stove, fully insulated and have an electrical car charging point. It is sustainable in supporting other local businesses. We will be proactively linking with local businesses providing activities and services suitable for disabled visitors, and all within a few miles, with examples detailed in the application. The proposed CAB will provide sustainability in the income stream that will be fed back into the local community as we are residents. It does not impact on the local housing market, where so many houses are used as holiday rentals, reducing the housing pool to full-time residents, and income is often spent outside the South Hams. We're passionate about this proposal and the positivity it can bring, and I hope you agree that the benefits of this project significantly outweigh any negatives. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Members, any questions for Mrs. Wooden? Yeah, Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, just one quick one. Is this restricted totally to disabled? Because if you get lots of bookings and there's no room, then you've done away with a disabled facility.
I think the plan for us is to actively market it to disabled people. There is a bit of a blockage because disabled people find it very challenging to actually book places, because often they've turned up and it's not been suitable accommodation. I think I had an example of that in Salcombe, where there was a Facebook page plea put out on the Salcombe and Kingsbridge Facebook page last summer, where somebody was coming down to stay in a property and she said, I'm just arriving, I'm in a mobility scooter, I can't access the property because I need a ramp to get in, can anybody help? And luckily somebody came to her rescue, but that kind of highlights the issue that people face. And going forward, Airbnb have just appointed a lady called Suzanne Edwards. She's a wheelchair user of 10 years. She has been appointed by Airbnb to oversee the accessibility of properties, because I think they've had lots of issues with people turning up and not being able to gain access. So they have pulled all of their accessibility rating on Airbnb. And they are now having to, anybody who's registering has to go through a rigorous process where they have to supply photographs and measurements before they're allocated an accessible label for their property. And that's going to be a massive game changer, that Airbnb, one of the biggest booking facilities, is going to be really stringent with how they market it. And, you know, so that's how we see that we can target and make sure that we are getting more disabled people. And historically, once people know that they can go somewhere, people get a lot of repeat bookings as well.
Thank you. Any other members? No? Thank you very much, Mrs. Wooden. I'll now call the local ward member. Well, indeed, yeah, sorry, my mistake, you read that out. Thank you.
Atherton Gifford Parish Council supports this application on the following grounds. Firstly, the site is outside the settlement boundary as defined by our Atherton Gifford Neighbourhood Plan. However, within this plan, policy AG1 states that outside of the settlement boundary developments will be strictly controlled and only permitted where it can be delivered sustainably, requires a countryside location, or will meet a proven local need which cannot be met inside the settlement boundary. Regarding the clause proven local need, the Parish Council can confirm that there is no specific disabled user holiday accommodation here in the village. This proposal is for a small-scale, purpose-built cabin tailored to disabled needs from the outset, rather than other properties offering holiday accommodation with adapted existing facilities. This accommodation would fill that need, which is not available elsewhere within the settlement boundary. Regarding the clause can be delivered sustainably, both the proposed construction and the future running of this cabin make it a low-impact building, also complying with the requirements of policy DEV 32 JLP for greater carbon reduction. There is consideration of construction, locally sourced materials, and it's just jumped, with super efficient insulation, biomass heating, solar power, low energy use fittings to give this building a low impact footprint which we can support. Secondly, our plan states that the local economy is founded primarily on agriculture and tourism businesses. The site for the cabin already has recreational and amenity status following planning application 0232/20/CLE. The cabin in this rural location would give the opportunity for holidaymakers with specific health or ability needs to enjoy a staycation in a rural setting, something the majority of us take for granted, but denied to many disabled people because there are so few holiday properties like this locally. AGNP, Local Economy, Para 54, states that fostering local business development is an objective of the plan. Permission for this application would enable an extra income stream for a local family with an existing business in the parish and experience in the hospitality sector. If granted permission, the holiday accommodation proposed here would further support our local tourist amenities and the rural economy. Thirdly, comments have been made about reliance on private vehicles because of the barn's rural situation here. However, a proportion of visitors to use this accommodation would be, by the nature of their conditions, already heavily reliant on their own private transport, no matter whether they are in an urban or rural setting. And realistically, for some of them, the bus transport is not always a suitable option either. In addition, the single-bedroom accommodation here would not generate a noticeable increase in daily traffic, and with the newly created entrance and drive, a bus stop is now within time reasonable access. AG Parish Council does not believe that refusal on either of these transport grounds for such a small volume of essential car use is either appropriate here or fair when judged against the significant benefits for people with disabilities.
Thank you, Ms Young. Excellent. Right, I'll now move to Councillor Kemp, please.
Hello, members. Firstly, I'd like to thank you all for turning up on the site visit on Monday. Sorry about the rain. I'm not blaming Janice. I would like to thank the applicants for putting up with us traipsing about on their property. The reason I've brought this application to committee is, as said, but also I just had concerns that it wasn't actually as unsustainable as it looks. So I just wanted members to have a look at it and see what they thought. Whilst I was looking through Darren's report, I came across some things in the MPPF. Chapter 2, paragraph 7 says about achieving sustainable development. It says about meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. I found that relevant. And also section 14, paragraph 152, I also believe to be relevant as they are actually minimising their own vulnerability and improving their resilience to an uncertain future. And just one other thing I wanted to read out to you is also from the MPPF, which is planning policies and decisions should recognise that sites to meet local business and community needs in rural areas may have to be found adjacent to or beyond existing settlements and in locations that are not well served by public transport. In these circumstances, it will be important to ensure that the development is sensitive to its surroundings, does not have an unacceptable impact on local roads and exploits any opportunities to make a location more sustainable. For example, by improving the scope for access on foot. I understand there is actually a footpath as well that runs from opposite the property to Bigbury. So I thought that counted towards improving accessibility, does it not? And that's it.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kemp. Any questions for Councillor Kemp at this stage? No. Right, we'll now move into debate. Members, over to you. First. Yep, Councillor Taylor.
Thank you very much. Yes, I mean, I've got to agree with the Parish Council of Gifford because I'm at Modbury, which is, well, sort of this is midway between Modbury and there's no disabled facilities at Modbury at all. I mean, everything is steep there and I mean, most of the public houses and that you wouldn't be able to get a lot of wheelchairs in there. Some of them you can, but it is all upstairs. So, I mean, I would certainly want to support this application.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Anyone else? Comments? Oh, Councillor Rowe, did you want to?
Thank you, Chairman. Well, everyone's very quiet. Yes, we went to the site on Monday. Pity about the heavy shower of rain, but that's South Devon for us. And we looked at the site and we were taken to we saw the exact site where the proposed building is going to be. It's not very big, and I wouldn't have a problem with it really. I think that it will fit in there nicely, and it will serve the purpose for disabled facilities, which we all know there are not that many disabled facilities available for people who want to come and stay, and it's not very easy for them if they arrive somewhere and it doesn't suit their needs, if they can't even access the property before you even start, and you probably had a stressful journey to get to where you want to be. As far as sustainability is concerned, we looked out onto the road and we're shown where the bus could stop, and apparently there's a bus stop, bus passes every hour, which is a pretty good bus service to me out in the country. You're lucky if you see one about twice a week in a lot of places, so I thought that's pretty good. I guess it probably goes Dartmouth, Kingsbridge, then on through Modbury and to Plymouth. I don't know if that's correct or not, but because it's not in my travel to work area. But so I would have thought it is reasonably sustainable. It's going to have all the facilities inside. We're told it's going to have a shower, kitchen, etc. So it will be like a concealed unit. And I didn't have a problem with it. So I will move approval, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Rowe. Councillor Foss, and then I'll come to you, Councillor Abbott, and then Councillor Long.
Yeah, Chairman. I haven't got a problem with it per se. It's a very admirable thing that they're doing, and we all know that there is a dire lack of this sort of facility. My only concern is, and this shows up the joint local plan, is that we are driving a coach and horses through our joint local plan. Probably that's what needs looking at, and I'm going to reserve judgment. I'm not against it, but I've just got that at the back of my mind that we are seen to be doing this several times now, where we've gone outside our actual joint local plan. And I know that's our right as councillors to do that when we want to, but it just seems that it's happening more often than perhaps it should.
Okay, yeah. Councillor Abbott.
Thank you. What I wonder about is what representation there is on behalf of disabled people in the formation of things like the joint local plan, and indeed amongst us. And it wouldn't be right for me to say I have insight into their views and their needs, but it's certainly something that I would like to stand up for when a case is made. So that the arguments on supporting disabled access have been well made. They've been compared to the statistics showing the lack of accommodation, and we have our only touchstone in the JLP, but I've never heard what the makeup of the decision makers in the JLP was as to whether they could take into account all these views of members of our society. On that basis, I second the proposal to let it go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Abbott. Just as far as the joint local plan was concerned, that was voted on by members of this council back in whenever it was. I think the point that you raise about were disabled people consulted about it, if I'm honest, I don't really know, and I think that's something that we as councillors should investigate and take further. So thank you for raising that. I think that's a very relevant point. Councillor Long.
Thank you, Chairman. This is serving an important need, and I think that's been quite clearly laid out, it's clearly identified. Unfortunately, cars are needed in an area like this. We can't get away from it, and those with certain levels of disability will have adapted cars, and they will still want to holiday, in an area like this. So why exclude them? And this provides a facility like that. Interestingly, I would have said this is one of the closest applications I've seen to a bus stop in a long time. Literally right outside. You can't really get much better than that. It is a better, a good bus service in the area compared to others. So it meets that, I believe, that sustainability element. Sustainable construction as well. It's in close proximity to existing building. It is a modest development serving a clearly identified need. So from that point of view, I will be supporting this application.
Okay, Councillor Kemp, and then I'm going to ask Ms Foles if she wants to make some comments. Councillor Kemp. Oh yeah, and then before that, Councillor Hodgson's got some comments.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Hodgson says it seems fine to me. It will meet a growing need for greater diversity in staycation accommodation. This kind of rural development supports local businesses. I'm sorry to have missed a site visit. I grew up with a disabled cousin. I'd be voting in favour if I was in the room.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Kemp.
Sorry, I just wanted to come back to Councillor Foss, and with regard to the JLP, did I understand correctly that it is a fluid document, and as we go along there will be bits and pieces that perhaps need tweaking, and maybe if this keeps coming up, that's maybe one of the bits that needs tweaking. Is that okay to say that?
That's okay. It's not a fluid document as such. It is as it is, but it can at stages be evolved, and that's something that we may want to look at.
Yes.
But I think as the JLP stands at the moment, this is classed as an unsustainable location, and as such, if you want to vote for it, which is against officer recommendation and the way the JLP, you have to persuade yourself or argue as to why it is a sustainable location, and or the fact that it's providing disabled facilities for holidaymakers over, is the benefits there outweigh the reasons to refuse it. So, I mean, because you've got economic and social benefits there as well. So, that's where you've got to decide amongst yourselves whether you feel that it's of that much benefit that it outweighs some of the, reasons that we've got in our joint local plan as to why we couldn't.
Yeah, can I going along the lines of the sustainability thing, there is that other application at Brixham that was 2840/20 FUL, and that was also classed as unsustainable.
No, I think that's right. I think that there have been cases, and I'd say to Councillor Foss, I mean, the reason why they come to committee is because there is a conflict between the joint local plan, that much of it is subjective, and what weight does one give to particular aspects of it? The provision of disabled holiday accommodation, does that outweigh other aspects? But anyway,
Thank you.
Ms Foles.
Thank you, Chair. Just picking up on that point, it's whether you've got exceptions. So you've got your JLP policies and whether there are exceptions to that, rather than trying to compare a different application. Focus on this one. But if I understand what the members are saying, really, because clearly there's a strong objection on JLP grounds why this shouldn't be allowed. But if I understand it rightly, the reason that you want it or minded to support it is because on the basis that it does provide a disabled holiday accommodation specifically for the disabled user. If that is right, and you don't have to make up your mind up now, but if that is right, then we will have to look at conditions to ensure that that is the type of holiday cottage or property that you are getting and that can be secured indefinitely. And that is a very difficult thing to do, in that you certainly wouldn't want to tie a condition to a disabled user. Yes, there's a definition of disability in statute, but we don't tie it to people, and you've got to consider about the enforceability of the condition. So, having had some thought about this, I think you'd have to focus on the design of the building, what the plans are, and I'm aware that the applicant talked about how it would be fitted out, and I think if you go against the officer recommendation, then we'd want to look at that condition to ensure that we secure that it's actually fitted out, because normally, as you're well aware, planning doesn't involve internal alterations of a building. So the widths of doors, the design, the access to it is is possible, but the internal fitments, which have been, I noted in the design and access statement, it does explain how it's going to be fitted out, and I think you really would need to secure that. Otherwise, you're going to probably end up with another dwelling in the countryside, which, from my understanding of what you're saying, is not what you're after. So I think you really need to think about how you can secure that, if you are minded to go against the officer recommendation.
Thank you, Ms. Falls. Councillor Panel.
Is there any scope for putting some minimum a percentage on how much of the bookings is by disabled persons? For example, could we say that 50% of all bookings must be by registered disabled people? Is there any way of doing that or monitoring it even?
I would say no, because I think that is very difficult to enforce. We have had a discussion about that. I've discussed that with Mr. Henry, and I think that is very difficult to enforce. And how do you check then that there was a person in that group? You know, that's also becoming invasive as to checking that, you know, keeping the identity of a disabled user rather than say that any other person in that. So I don't think that that's why I think, Councillor, that we need to look at how it's fitted out, how it's and the design and the approved plans and reliance on the design and access statement. I think we were talking about that these details should be supplied to the council so they can be satisfied that it meets accessibility and inclusivity regulations, which there are some. And I think possibly you could look at actively marketing it for disabled users. That's easier to monitor than actually who then occupies and the percentage. It's a difficult one, but I need to be clear that that's the type of accommodation you're trying to secure rather than just any holiday accommodation.
Could it be added that the adaptations are provided in perpetuity, so that it can't be retrofitted to an ordinary property in future years?
Yes, and so I think the officers would want to see those before, because they are mentioned. They've been mentioned by the applicant today, and they've been mentioned in the design and access statement, and you know, you want to see those secured, don't you?
Thank you, Ms. Foles. And any more before we go to the vote? We've had it's been moved for approval, which has been seconded. That's against officer recommendation. You've just heard from Ms. Foles about some of the conditions that, because I think the reason that that I don't want to put words into your mouth, but the reason that you might be minded to support it is because of the fact that it's exceptional in the sense that it's providing disabled accommodation, which is, I mean, from the statistics, was severely lacking in the South Hams, and that's something that we want to rectify, and this would see a step in the right direction. But we need to, we've got to make sure that first of all, and this is no reflection on the applicants, but we need to make sure that we can't then have a spate of applications for disabled people that then end up not being for disabled people. So we need to be sure in ourselves that there's some kind of condition that fits that. So I don't know if you've got that to hand at the moment, or if you feel that that's something that if it is approved, that you'd like to come back with. I mean, my own view, and I think it was mentioned as well, is that this idea of that another thing is that we'd want it to be advertised on the right sort of Facebook pages or whatever, so that people with disabilities will be, it's there for them, and that might be something, that.
Just that one last question, really. When we talk about internal fittings, does that come under the remit of the building regulations, or can it be? I mean, because somebody's got to look at that, obviously.
No, I don't think it's building regulations, because building regulations would tend to be looking at the structural detail, and the fittings we're talking about are the fittings I understand it were shown in the design access statement, are things like sinks on a lower level, or sinks that move up and down, and furniture, I suppose, or handrails and that. So I don't think it's part of the building regs. So I think it would be for us to monitor and enforce if it was needed to be. But no, I don't believe it's building regs. I think it goes beyond what building regs covers.
Yes, please do.
I mean, clearly I can see the direction of travel here. I think if approved, I think I would, as the last application this morning, I think I would like it to be delegated approval, so we can sort out the conditions with yourself and whoever proposed and seconds motion if it's successful. I think standard ones, it's have to be the time condition, it's have to be in accordance with the approved plans, as you were. I think there would need to be a condition, a wider condition around it's holiday use only, so it can't be used as a permanent dwelling. That wouldn't come as a surprise. We need to double check, but I think it just needs to be a condition saying that the drainage is carried out in accordance with the details we've got. I think we've got details that are acceptable. We just need to tie that down. I'd like to have a look at something around the Dev 32. I know solar panels have been shown on the drawings. just need to put a condition to make sure that they are actually installed, so they're not just forgotten. I'm not saying they would be, but as you know, I'm always looking for belt and braces on these things. And then I think there are two. One is straightforward around. I think they need prior to not commencement. I think prior to completion, they'd need to provide us with a marketing strategy of how it's going to be marketed to maximise the opportunity for less able people to book it. So it wasn't just put on a marketing site without any specific flags that this is here, this is for less able people, to try and get that focus on that market if possible. So I think we just need to see a strategy of how that's done, and then that strategy carried out. And I think the other one, and I agree with Mrs. Foles, I think we need to have precise details or specification of how it's going to be constructed and fitted out to make sure it is as accessible as the design and access statement is suggesting it will be. So I don't think we're looking for anything over and above the applicants have suggested they could do. I think it's just tying them down to that they do what they're saying they're going to do. Again, I'm not passing any comment on whether they are or aren't going to do it. I'm not suggesting I think they won't, but again, I just need to make that, I think we need to that tie down, and it has to be retained in perpetuity. But I think they're too complicated to get done on the hoof, and I don't think that'd be fair. I don't think that'd be fair for members or the applicants, to be honest. And the only question I've got, because I didn't go on the site visit, is there a need for any additional landscaping to screen the building? And if so, it needs a condition. If not, it doesn't. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that, Mr. Weimer. Landscaping members, what are your feeling? I mean, Councillor Abbott?
I think that could severely restrict the view from the balcony where these people have come on holiday in the South Hams. I think it would be a shame to impose that as a condition over and above anything that the proposers think suitable at the time.
Through you, Chair. So is it simply a condition to say the landscaping as shown on the plan submitted is, do we make sure that the landscaping that's proposed is undertaken and nothing more than that?
Yeah,
Okay,
I think
thank
okay.
you.
It was quite well, even though it's up against the hedge. It was, yeah, and it wasn't right out on its own, was it? It was no. Yeah. So I think we're okay with the we're more relaxed about landscaping than say we were about the Councillor Reeve.
Well, we seem to go and have site visits and we have a good look what's going to be there, but we never do revisit any of our sites. And wouldn't it be educational to know and then pick out and do a few revisits, because then we can see what mistakes we've made or what good achievements we've made.
Absolutely, I think that's a very good idea. We have done that in the past. And I think the idea of having a day touring around some of the decisions that we've approved. You'd like to put that one down? Well, Mr. Weimer's got.
I think it's already. I think the phrase was down in the books. I think it already is in the papers for the AGM of the Joint Local Plan. I think there is something in there about having members visiting decisions, both good and, I think it's good, and where opportunities lost rather than anything.
Okay.
I've been on visits with previous authorities where they said bad developments, and the occupiers of those developments really were quite miffed about being called bad developments. So
okay, all right. Well, we don't want to upset their sensibilities, right? Okay, but thank you for raising that, Councillor Reeve. Right. So we've got a proposal. It's been moved and seconded for approval. The reasons why have been given as to why we think this is exceptional, because it definitely is. As Councillor Foss has said, is in some way conflicts with our joint local plan. The conditions, I hope you're all happy with the conditions that you've heard. I mean, the extra conditions that will come to myself and the proposer and seconder will be about how we can try and fix that it will be, for mainly disabled holidaymakers.
Yeah, I don't think we can fix that it will be mainly occupied by disabled holidaymakers. I think that goes one say. But what we can ensure that it is fitted out to the extent that it doesn't prevent anybody, either able or less able, having a holiday in that unit.
Okay, fair enough, and also, but the marketing as well. I think
yes,
that's
absolutely.
An important
Yes.
part. Yeah. Okay. Good. Right. Are we all happy with that? So we know what we're voting for. So can I have a show of hands for those in favour of approval, please show. Thank you very much, members. Right, we'll just give a quick 5-minute break and then we'll come back and do the last application. So see you back in here at half.
Sweetie pie, aren't you? You're not going to give Diddy a cuddling? I thought you were cuddling him.
Right, back live. Last application, so 6E, this is St Anne's Chapel. I know it's sort of been presented as a agenda item as we normally see it, at executive or full committee. But I think in essence that what we are doing is that there is an element of affordable within this application, and it's the split that was some were sold as discounted at a discounted rate, and some were rented out. And what we're doing is we're going to go for all rented out. So we as a committee have to, because it's a 106, I think we have to agree that we're happy with that. I think that's about right.
That's absolutely right. The reason it's come here is that when the planning decision was made, the heads of terms of the Section 106 agreement were specifically agreed by this committee. So because it's a council application and they were specifically agreed, it needs to come back here for your agreement that for the changes to those specific terms. But I'll leave colleagues.
Okay, so Alex, are you going to sort of?
Becky's doing the headline.
Okay, all right. Okay.
Sorry, I'm passing to Becky there, and then I will be taking questions if you've got any.
Sure. Okay, right.
Having said that, thank you, Chair. I think between yourself and Mr. Weimer, you've stolen my thunder. In that.
Last time. You can take it out on us at the next meeting.
Oh no, you can't.
So it's really that the same number of affordable units of affordable dwellings are being proposed. That hasn't changed. It's just the tenure of those dwellings, and because it was a council application, it is right and proper for transparency that it comes to you. Any questions regarding that tenure is really to my learned colleague, Ms. Rehag.
Right. Alex, do you want to just sort of explain sort of, you know, how we've ended up here with the change to 8 rather, you know, 4 and 4?
So my understanding is that the initial application was for 8 discount market units and 1 rented unit, or it could be 7. So was it 7 and 1? It totaled 8, I think, 3 and 5. So we are now seeking to do deliver all of those as rented units. They're going to be affordable rented units. And the reason for that is that Homes England funding changed. We were no longer able to secure as much money as what we thought we could. We want to deliver this scheme. We've got a real high level of housing need in that area. We did a survey, this is going back a few years now, and I think we've got about 16 households identified. I'm sure that has increased in the last few years as well. So this is a scheme it's got planning permission. It's basically just changing that tenure, but making sure that everybody's aware of that, because we need to be transparent.
Thank you. And obviously it's still going to satisfy a need there, is it? Yeah.
Yes, it will satisfy the need. The proposed tenure is for affordable rent. We would like to see social rent, but we cannot get a decision on that until a later date. So it will still fall within the MPPF definitions of a rented unit that's affordable for local people.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't know if you can answer this question or not, but when you say affordable rented, can you name a price or a monthly fee? Oh, sorry, I must have missed that bit. I'll shut up.
Sorry, through you, Chair, if I can just come back on one point that Councillor Brown has highlighted. There's 2 different levels of the broad rental market area that's mentioned in the initial report that members approved back in 2 years ago, and one that is mentioned now, which was between the South Hams broad rental market area and the Plymouth broad rental market area. The location of these properties actually falls within the Plymouth broad rental market area. These properties will meet the needs of people within St Anne's Chapel and Bigbury Parish, but I just don't want any confusion to arise between that, because there is 2 differences in the prices.
Okay, sorry, Chairman, if I may briefly come back, because I found it. That looks like a fairly reasonable sum to me, and within reach of quite a lot of people that wouldn't otherwise be reached. So that looks quite good.
That would also be the maximum. That amount is, you would not pay any more than that. So hopefully we will be able to come in at a lower rate, but we can't guarantee that, and don't want to be coming back to committee every 5 minutes to get you to approve changes.
Yeah, Chair, if I may, whilst you've got those figures in 2.5, the Section 106 agreement will not put in precise figures on the rent. It would, otherwise we would be coming backward and forward. But there is a cap, and the applicant, the council, is seeking to bring it in below that figure.
Yeah, Councillor Taylor and then Councillor Foss.
Yes, thank you. Just the housing survey, is that done within the immediate neighbourhood of Bigbury and Kingston and Ringmore and the parishes within that area? How do you come to a conclusion on the housing need? I mean, I understand from the parish council that the rentables are more sought after than the part-owned ones, and they're in it, you know, from that point of view, I pick up a need. But I was just wondering where the housing survey is taken from.
The housing needs survey was carried out by Devon Communities Together. I'm just trying to find the exact date of that. It was during the months of December 2016 and 17, and that will cover the whole of Bigbury Parish. So that is St Anne's, will cover Bigbury, and I think Ringmore may be coming into that as well. So, and that figure of 16 people on that responded to that survey is a need that's been identified. So clearly those properties aren't quite meeting the need, but there may be people that have moved on, displaced to other areas in adjoining parishes, etc.
Councillor Foss.
Yeah, Chairman, my only concern is, what about the right to buy rules? Have they changed in as much that, you know, after a certain period of time, a tenant has the right to buy it at a discounted price?
I'm not an expert on this. One of my colleagues is dealing with the potential community benefit company, but those properties, we would want to exempt them from the right to buy. They're not going to be, we're not anticipating that we're going to open the housing revenue account again. So we may put these properties either to into that CBS, the Community Benefit Society, or to a housing association to manage on our behalf. None of that has actually been decided yet, but we will be avoiding the right to buy with those properties. We don't want to be losing that stock.
Thank you for that.
No, that's good. Councillor Rowe.
Well, thank you, Chairman. I'm a bit concerned about this really, because you said your housing needs survey was done, I think, in 2016, 17. Well, that's 5 years ago. So I would imagine that people who were in a housing need 5 years ago have probably found a house by now and will be settled. There will obviously be more people coming on, but I think you need an up-to-date housing needs survey. And following on from there, South Hams has recently declared a housing crisis, I believe, and we were talking, I'm not sure if we may even have approved it, that we were going to allow people to start up with a minimum of £3,500 deposit to start within a housing, for the deposit to actually buy a house and do part rent, part buy, and to keep the places heated and running and all the rest of it. And the maximum amount I was told was going to be £1,000 per month. But you could maybe correct me if I'm wrong.
I'll come in with the first bit in terms of the housing needs survey, and I'll defer to colleagues on the other bit. If we were looking at a completely fresh application, then yes, I'd be saying we need a new housing needs survey. But what we're looking at here is the variation to an approval that's already approved 8 affordable dwellings. So we're not changing the number of affordable dwellings, but to be honest, we're going to a tenure that I think is probably better for the settlement and the parish than approved, because we're going from shared ownership to rent. And my very uneducated, very damp finger in the air would suggest that there's actually a greater need for rented accommodation than shared ownership. So I think if we were looking at a fresh application, then no, we wouldn't be relying on a 5, 6, 7 year old housing needs survey, but we're looking at variation of something that got approved, and it got approved some years ago on the basis of what was at the time an up-to-date housing needs survey. Does that help?
Yeah, that's fine, thank you.
And the second bit was about the housing crisis and the staircasing starting at a very low level. Alex, I don't know if you've got any comments on that.
If I can take those as two separate bits, really. The housing crisis, these properties will ultimately assist with that. They're not going to solve that crisis. It's too big a crisis to resolve with 8 or 11 properties. But the social rented element of that will certainly, contribute to that. In terms of the other part, when you talk about the help with the costs, etc., we can't propose any intermediate home ownership products here, so that wouldn't be helping in that regard. But there are other sites that would be able to help on, and those people may be able to, they may be in the surrounding areas, but we just cannot do it here in that instance.
Yeah.
That's not a big difference. Thank you.
Councillor Brown and then Councillor Long.
In a separate capacity, I deal with a lot of people who are looking for housing in the local area, and the simple problem is that, to be honest with you, there isn't any. That's the simple problem at the moment. You go on the websites like Devon Home Choice, and there just isn't any for rent at least. So hopefully, clearly, this isn't going to solve all the problem. I don't think anyone's under any illusion of that, but it starts it, doesn't it? So I'd be very happy to support this.
Okay. Councillor Long.
Chairman, I think this is a sensible move, a move that is needed. Social rented accommodation needs to be increased. This is one little step in that direction. I'm quite happy to second the approval.
Did someone propose it? No, we haven't had it proposed. Oh, right. So Councillor Brown has proposed. It's been seconded by Councillor Long. Any more? Just from my own point of view, I mean, how this has been presented to us in a sort of an agenda item case. I mean, I haven't got any problems with the affordable housing arrangements here. I do have issues with this particular project because I feel that the numbers just, you know, the amount of money that we're investing, so something like £4 million or something, whatever, to produce this number of houses seems to me, you know, extravagant. That, you know, that's not a sustainable model that we can follow on, and I do think there are problems that have arisen out of this project that have not been carefully looked at by elected members. In the sense that when it started out, we were going to be offering these houses for sale in the region of £150,000 for a 3-bedroom, or 180 for a 3, 150 for 2, and it's now ended up with a local housing allowance rents, which is slightly different from what we were assured at the beginning of this whole project. So, whereas I'm happy the proposal to change the makeup of the affordable, what I'm not happy to do is to endorse this report as it is, because it's not something that I can personally endorse. Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, just a comment on that. Is not some of the funding coming through the community housing scheme? I mean, we got, what did we have on that, 2 million or 2.1 million or something on the community housing scheme, which came from central government?
It did. We had 1.89 millions, and some of it is involved in this, but a lot of this is money that we're actually borrowing again. I mean, I don't know how much the total scheme is for, but it's certainly over 4 million.
Chair, can I come in there, please? Because those are matters that I've not got to hand. But what I would say is that the report is seeking a variation to the Section 106 agreement, and that's all we're seeking to do. We're not trying to change the development in any other way. Only the tenure of the units. So I don't think we. I don't want you to go into a debate where you are unable to make a decision on those matters. That's not what's before you today. It's just the variation to the Section 106 agreement. That would be another arena. It's outside of your delegations.
But the chairman was concerned about the amount of money that's borrowed.
Yes. Yeah.
And my concern would turn on again is when you start looking at ladder and you could buy 10% and then you get £3,000 towards a deposit and you get a ladder. I mean, my concern is we would lose a lot of these rented accommodations. Now that to me doesn't add up.
Well, in the Section 106 agreement, the council will be obliged to deliver those 8 affordable dwellings on the tenure that's agreed with you today. If there's other questions about the scheme and the cost of the schemes, then I think those would have to go outside of this committee to Mr. Brooks or it would be Isabel.
Okay. Councillor Long.
Chairman, I don't disagree with the sentiments that you've expressed about the whole scheme and potentially how it's been delivered. All I'm seconding is the change of the tenure makeup, which I think at this time is important. So I'm not disagreeing with you. I think there are questions still.
No, and thank you for that, Councillor Long. And I think Ms. Foles has clarified that position as well. So so the proposal is that's been proposed and seconded to vary the tenures or vary the 106 agreement in respect of tenures of the affordable housing to 8 rented. And that's what it is. So can I have a show of hands for all those in favour of that proposal? Thank you very much. And that's it, members. Well done. Before 4 o'clock. Have we? No, we did that. Yeah, we did. Yeah, sure. Okay. So I'm going to formally close the meeting.